friends, we are going to talk on the matrix of manifestation. Are you aware that in the last few years a new phenomenon is being discussed all around the world, and it is called the law of attraction. In fact, the hype about this law of attraction took place when a film called What the Bleep Do We Know was released a few years ago. Would you like to see what the people about the film want to say?
Why are we here?
What is my life? Why is there life at all? How is it done? What's going on here? Why am I here?
Where do we come from?
Look at quantum physics.
An immense quantum mechanical physics of possibility.
Quantum mechanics allows.
Supreme mind.
Brain is capable of millions of neural nets.
Has to use biochemical
Emotional response.
The brain does not know the difference between what it sees in its environment and what it remembers.
We are running the holodeck.
Whatever way we observe the world around us,
The rabbit hole and how deep and how far we want to go is really how much do you want to discover about your true nature? Anybody who spends too much time trying to explain it is likely to get lost forever down the rabbit hole of mysteriousness.
What becomes real? Is it our body? Is it our cumulative genetics? Is it how we look? Is it how we walk? Is it how much we weigh or don't weigh?
What we're going to do with that knowledge and how we're going to speculate and examine possibilities and potentials to ask the big questions. What if? What would it be like? How would it be? The moment we ask those questions, it forces the brain to begin to fire in new sequences and new patterns. It breaks the routine.
I was basically trying to find the answers to what I've often called those four great questions that everybody faces, whether they realize it or not, even the agnostics and the atheists, as well as the believers and the pious. And that is, who are we? Where do we come from? What should we do? And where are we going? And if you don't answer those four great questions, obviously your life is pretty meaningless. And many people just stuff those questions down, and they want the answers made for them, or they want somebody like Jesus or Krishna or Buddha or somebody else to do it for them. It can't be done. It's like wanting someone to be born for you, or to die for you, or to eat your lunch for you. These things are inescapably personal.
What is truth? What is lasting truth? What is really important to you?
Questions about whether the world really looks anything like we take it to look, or whether this is just something that's radically altered by being filtered through our perspective, so on and so forth. These are questions which I take it everybody has a natural curiosity about. These are questions, these are the sorts of questions that, thinking about them is what makes life interesting.
physics of mind, physics of thought. What is a thought? What's it made of? Is it made of anything? Does it have its own independent reality? So these are the kind of things that we have to ask about. These are some of the questions that quantum physicists and so forth are looking at, and some of the questions that researchers of consciousness studies are looking at to try to uncover and unravel what is human consciousness and how we make sense of it.
Why are we here? Well, that is the ultimate question, isn't it? By we, I assume you mean consciousness, conscious beings. That's we. So why have consciousness here?
Do we really think we've used the mass of our brain power? You think we've really reached the depth of our intelligence? That would be an insult to us. We're really great beings.
Where do we end? You know, where do we end and the rest of the world begin? You know, how come we feel separate when we aren't separate? And of course, one of the big questions is, if everything is mutable and reality isn't set, well, how come it feels solid?
The question really is, what is God doing to make a universe?
Oh, God. When we ask the great questions, something amazing happens in our mind. We have to stop the routine way in which we think. We have to stop allowing the environment to turn on the circuits in our brain that cause us to think the repetitive patterns that we are so in the habit of thinking on a daily basis. To ask the great questions is to be an inspiration. It's to stop the moving locomotive of our life.
After this film, another film was released in 2007 and created a hype all around the world. The name of the film was The Secret.
Throughout history, all the great minds, all the great leaders, all the great achievers, they have something in common. Now the great glimmering of truth can be revealed again.
You know, this secret gives you everything you want. Happiness, health, and wealth. You can have, do, or be anything you want.
I've seen many miracles take place in people's lives. Financial miracles, miracles of physical healing, mental healing, healing in relationships.
All of this happened because of knowing how to apply the secret.
In spite of a lot of literature being available in the form of books and on the net, there has been a lot of ambiguity, confusion and doubt in the minds of people about the mechanics of the law of attraction. What is the law of attraction all about? Is it really a law? Does it really influence our lives? Do our thoughts and emotions influence our lives internally and as well as interfere with our external reality? If so, how? What are the mechanics and how does the law of attraction actually work? I intend to put some light on this subject in this video, and I hope you would understand the subject better. before we try to understand the mechanics of the law of attraction, let us first try to understand how our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs influence our lives. The first thing I would like to tell you is that though we may look like a single functioning unit, we function on two layers of existence. One is the conscious and the other the subconscious. The conscious is our thinking self, the place where we think about ourselves. We think about our natures, our psychological dispositions, our likes, our dislikes, our capacities, our fears, our limitations, our anxieties. So wherever thinking takes place, it takes place at our conscious layer. That is the reason we gauge ourselves according to what goes on in our conscious minds. We think what we consciously think we are. But actually, whatever comes to our conscious mind has its roots deep down in our subconscious. This is very important for us to understand. Because when life doesn't go the way we want it to, we start finding for its reasons outside. We feel that there is an external reason for the obstacles and the difficulties that we face in our life. So what does a normal person do? Most of the time, people get frustrated. And what do? They go to an astrologer and find out what is it in their future. They would find a guru and try to seek his blessings. They may even find a numerologist. They might change the spellings in their name to change their futures. They might even catch hold of a person to balance the dynamics of their so-called Vastu. Some even try to wear precious and non-precious stones. But friends, whenever we find life not going the way we want it to, what do? We find external reasons for it. But there is a new science, a new branch of science emerging in the form of energy psychology, which has to say something else. The researchers and the scientists of energy psychology are claiming that when life is not going the way we want it to, when we are experiencing obstacles and difficulties in our lives, instead of searching for reasons and causes outside, we should just peep into our own selves and we would find the reasons and causes lying buried deep down in our subconscious. It is the subconscious which influences and orients all our life. But unfortunately, we are unaware of it. Friends, the subconscious layer of ours gets programmed from the time we are in our mother's womb. It depends on the psychological disposition of our mother. It depends on her nature. It depends on how she carries herself throughout the period of those 9 months. Her frustrations, her hatreds, her angers, her joys, her pleasures, her confidence, all that seeps into the growing womb. And when we are born, we are partially programmed, which we experience to be our natures. And then as we grow, we get influenced from so many areas of our life. It is from our parents, from our relatives, from our friends, from our teachers, from social influences like the media, and from so many areas we get bombarded by different kind of ideas. Whatever we consider to be true and accept as fact become our programs. And these programs create a filter in our minds, and we start observing the life around us through these filters. Not only the life around us, we start gauging ourselves from these filters. I would just like to give you some examples on the general filters that we tend to carry along. Suppose as a child you considered it to be true that a house which was located in the outskirts of your town was haunted. And if you believed it, mind you, it became your reality. Simultaneously, if you considered it to be true that a cat crossing your road is an inauspicious sign, and you started believing it, it became your reality. Simultaneously, if you considered it to be true that a particular phases of the moon or a particular day is either auspicious or inauspicious, and when you started believing it, it also turned out to be your reality. Friends, if you considered it to be true that eating an ice cream in winters might bring up a sore throat, and you believed in it, it became your reality. In the same way, if you considered it to be true that mother-in-laws and step-parents are nasty, then it became your reality. In the same way, if you consider it to be true that there is no gain, if there is no pain, and if it becomes your belief, then mind you, it will also become your reality. In the same way, if you consider it to be true that earning money is a very, very difficult thing, and very few lucky people can earn money or have an abundant life, and if you believed it, then it became your reality. Now, if you have understood what I have said, you will realize that our beliefs become our realities. It's very important for us to understand and digest that our programs become our beliefs and our beliefs become our realities. So whatever we experience as an external reality is actually the reflection of our own beliefs. That is the reason Einstein says that we create our own realities. If you have understood this phenomenon, you will realize that behind every achievement and failure of ours, there is a force of belief which is at work. So if you have understood this, you will realize that it is our thoughts and emotions which have been conditioned and condensed into our subconscious mind, which actually influence our life multidimensionally. Now to understand how our thoughts and emotions influence our life at a very micro level and interfere and influence our so-called external reality, we need to find out what this external reality is made up of. This external reality is made up of all that we experience: our planet, the sun, the moon, the people on this planet, the cars, the trees, the animals, the so-called external reality. What are all these things made up of? Now let us understand that the so-called external reality of ours is made up of tiny units of energy known as atoms. Now those who are not familiar with how the atom looks let us try to look at the atom. If you look at the atom, you will realize that it has an orbit of electrons moving around a nucleus. And the nucleus has protons, neutrons, and other subatomic particles. Now, I don't want you to go into the hardcore physics of an atom. I just want you to understand one thing, that the so-called external reality of ours is actually made up of atoms. Everything that we experience in our external reality, all those solid and separate objects, maybe the chair which I am sitting on, maybe the money, the currency that we hold in our hands, maybe the people we love, maybe the car that we drive, maybe the house that we live in, or this apple. Now this apple for us looks absolutely solid, but let us try to go inside this apple and find out what it consists of. Now let us go inside this apple. We will go inside this apple through an electron microscope. At the first layer, we would find its cells. As we go deeper, we will find its DNA structure, the double helix. And as we go still further, we would find the layer of the electrons. As we go further, we would find the nucleus. Here you would see the nucleus and the electrons moving around. In the nucleus, there are neutrons and protons. As we go either in the neutrons and the protons, we would find 3 quarks. And as we go inside the quark, we would find a subtle vibration. Now this vibration is behind every form. All the forms that we see in this universe are actually made up of vibratory frequencies like this. Now friends, this was about the forms that we see in and around our lives. All the forms that we see and experience are actually made up of atoms and finally made up of vibrations. But what about the empty spaces? What is it that is there in empty spaces that we experience? The distance. What is there between two people? What is there between two buildings? What does the space consist of? You might say it's air. Yes, it's not only air, but it's filled with different kind of vibratory frequencies, which we called the EMF, the electromagnetic field. Friends, we experience this electromagnetic field in the form of radio and television waves, then the microwaves, the infrared, the ultraviolet, the X-rays, the gamma rays, the cosmic rays, etc., etc. Our physicists till date have been able to experience the cosmic rays. So this empty space, though it looks empty, is actually not empty. It is filled with different kind of frequencies. If you understand this, you will realize that all the forms in and around us are vibrating in a vibrating space, in a vibrating field of energy. Now the question arises as to how our thoughts, our emotions influence this vibratory field. To understand this, we would just like to peep into our brain. Just let us go into our brain and find out what happens when we think or emote.
If you see, these are the neurons and the neural pathways in our brain. When we think and emote, an electromagnetic charge takes place in our brain. Now this charge doesn't limit itself to our head only, but transmits itself in a form of a frequency in the entire field of energy.
Whatever we think has a frequency. Now if you understand this, you will realize that different emotions carry different frequencies. When we are experiencing joy and happiness, we are transmitting the frequency of joy. When we are in anger, we are transmitting the frequency of anger. When we are in doubt, we are transmitting a frequency of doubt. And when we are feeling insecure within us, we are transmitting the frequency of insecurity. I think this is very important for us to understand, because frequencies have a nature and mechanics of their own. If you are slightly conversant with physics, you will be aware that there is a phenomenon known as sympathetic resonance. Sympathetic resonance means when two similar frequencies sync with each other. To explain this phenomenon, I would like you to look at the tuning fork.
If you see, there are 3 tuning forks in this slide. 2 are of the similar frequency of 440 Hz, and the third one is of a different frequency of 442. Now when you strike one of the tuning forks, the one which shares the similar frequency will start vibrating, but the third one, which doesn't share the frequency, will not vibrate.
Thus, 2 similar frequencies try to sync with each other and try to create what is known as resonance. And mind you, friends, this phenomenon of the resonance is what is called the attractor factor. So, when we think, we transmit a particular frequency into the field, to the field. If we are in joy, we transmit a frequency of joy. If we are in doubt, we transmit a frequency of doubt. And when this frequency goes out into the energy field, the field full of different kind of frequencies, it tends to activate, sync, and attract towards itself a similar kind of event, circumstance, person, or the same kind of frequency. I think this is the law of attraction, which keeps on influencing our life internally as well as externally. So, if you observe, if you are in a very good, happy and joyous mood, you will tend to see things brighter. But if you are in a very low mood, you will also see things, observe things, and experience things of low frequency. This is how our external reality keeps on influencing and interfering with our frequencies, and that is how we experience our own realities. If you have understood this, you have understood a very important phenomenon of energy mechanics. So, what actually matters when it comes to shaping our life the way we want it to is on what kind of frequencies do we vibrate. What is the kind of frequencies do we transmit, and what kind of vibratory charges do we give to things, to areas in our lives. Though this mechanics looks very simple, it's very difficult for us to take control of our lives. It's because we have been conditioned since our childhood with self-limiting beliefs. We have been programmed to be cautious about so many things since our childhood that we actually vibrate at our core from the frequency of insecurity. If you just peep deep down into yourselves, you will find emotions of insecurity, worry, fear, anxiety, anger to be your predominant emotions. These emotions vibrate as our core frequencies and become our background music. Thus, consciously or unconsciously, we keep on transmitting frequencies of insecurity which just seep subtly from our subconscious self and thus experience circumstances which make us feel insecure. Actually, we feel that it is our circumstances that incite the feeling of insecurity within us. But actually, it is our unconsciously transmitted frequencies of insecurity which create circumstances that make us feel insecure. That is the reason finding out what charge do we give to different areas and aspects of our lives is very important, for that will give us the control to change things the way we want to and influence the entire matrix of the universe. To enable us to understand this phenomenon better, let us try to find out as to what kind of charge do we give to our health. Do we feel very anxious about our health? Are we very cautious about our health? If that is so, we are giving it a charge of insecurity. So many a time we will experience health-related problems just emerging out of the blue for no evident cause. Similarly, if you find out as to what kind of charge you give to your work, to your job, you will realize that you are also experiencing the same kind of circumstances. If you are very insecure about your job, if you are anxious, if you are not in tune with the people around, if you are in distressful relationships with your colleagues, if you don't enjoy what you are doing, you will experience similar unpleasant circumstances in your work. If you are very tensed about your boss, if you are very anxious about your boss will also tend to make you feel very tensed and anxious. Similarly, the same mechanics works whether it's your family, it's your children, it's your relatives, it's your in-laws, it's your work, or the society at large. If you are very anxious about the growth of your children, you will experience that your children will undergo certain circumstances which will really make you feel anxious. Similarly, if you hate your in-laws, hate your relations, hate your relatives, you will experience that these relatives of yours also will create circumstances in your life which will make you hate them more. If you are doing a job, a target-oriented job, and have anxieties about your target, If you feel within that it is not possible for you to achieve your target, mind you, you will never achieve your target, because that is the emotional charge you keep on giving to that area of your life. So, this applies to all the areas of our lives. Since the effects that we experience are not linear, we don't understand that there is an energy mechanics at work. We take life at its face value, like we think that solid objects are actually solid, but which quantum physics has proved that they are not. So, we are at the center of moving the matrix of our lives, but unfortunately unaware of it. Understanding this phenomenon will give us control. We will not be mere participators or reactors, but we will be creators. We can now learn to apply the mechanics to move the universal matrix to fulfill our dreams and desires. There are some fundamental questions which need some explanation and understanding. The first question is, how can we prove that consciousness influences reality? Now friends, this question is very, very important, because this was the turning point in the lives of quantum physicists, where they realized that consciousness actually has the power to influence the so-called reality. Now we have seen that the so-called reality is made up of atoms. So the atomic structure, the electrons, the protons, or the subatomic particles, can they be influenced by the consciousness? To explain this, we need to look at a video which will explain how consciousness influences even the electrons and the photons. Now the video which I am going to show you was one of the first experiments quantum physicists did to find out how consciousness influences the so-called material reality. Material. Though we may call it material, there is nothing material, because inside of everything that is material, it's only vibrations. However, the first experiment, which was conducted in the year 1801 by a physicist called Thomas Young. We will understand this experiment. The name of this experiment is the double slit experiment. This is self-explanatory. It actually was conducted to find out the nature of the photon or the electron. But later on, one important thing was also found out, that consciousness influences reality. Let us have a look at this so-called famous or infamous double
of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. this is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marble, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter, through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange netherworld of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function.
So the electron is very peculiar. The electron is very peculiar in the sense that when you are not looking, electron can be here, can be there, or can be over there in the corner of this room. It can be all over this room, so to speak. But whenever we look, this is the strange thing about these electrons. Whenever we look, we always find them to be in one particular Geiger counter, although we may have a room full of Geiger counters. We never hear the Geiger counter sticking all over the room. This is the fundamentally important stuff about the electron.
I think you have understood how consciousness influences reality. Now there's a second question. When I have been trying to tell you since the beginning of this video that our thoughts get transmitted and influence the so-called outside reality. Now the question is there any kind of scientific evidence to this, or is it just a hypothesis? To answer this question, I would like to take you to the experiment conducted by a polygraph expert called Cleve Backster. Now, Cleve Backster was a polygraph expert who conducted experiments with the polygraph on so many things. One day he thought that he should find out how plants react to polygraphs. So he attached plants with electrodes which he fitted to his polygraph to see what actually happens. He wanted to see whether there is any effects of the vibratory frequency of plants on the polygraph. So he attached the plants with electrodes which he plugged on to the polygraph. Initially, the plant was just vibrating at its base frequency. Cleve Backster was observing that plant, and incidentally, while he was doing that, he was drinking coffee. It just came to his mind that if he put the leaf of that plant in that hot coffee, mind you, at that very moment, something very interesting happened, which I would like to show you in this clip.
Early in the morning and no other person was in the laboratory. My thought and intent was, I'm going to burn that leaf. The very moment the imagery of burning that leaf entered my mind, the polygraph recording pen moved rapidly to the top of the chart. No words were spoken, no touching the plant, no lighting of matches, just my clear intention to burn the leaf.
Friends, I think this is the first evidence which proves that something in the form of a frequency goes out from us and influences our outside reality. Now there is a third evidence which has come up in the last few years, an experiment conducted by a researcher called Masaru Emoto from Japan. Though mainstream scientists are still not ready to accept what Masaru Emoto has seen in water, but still Masaru Emoto claims that the droplets of water can understand his thoughts and emotions. Now let us have a look at a clip from the Messages from Water, a video by Masaru Emoto where he actually gathers water from different places and sees what he sees in the water drops which he has frozen. Let us have a look at this clip.
In this clip, water is collected from different sources, from springs, from waterfalls, and even taps. Water is collected in plastic bottles and taken into their laboratories, where they are struck like this and drops are poured in Petri dishes. Now these Petri dishes are collected and kept in a fridge to be frozen. When they are frozen, they are kept under a microscope, and this is where something miraculous starts taking place. The drops which are frozen have their own identity. Different kinds of water show different patterns in the water. Like water is collected from different sources, have different frequencies and different designs, Similarly, when we talk to water, it understands our emotions also and have different frequencies to different emotions, thus responds differently to our emotions also. You will see different kind of shapes taking place inside the water droplet.
And friends, there are again lots of evidences as to how consciousness influences reality. People who are interested in finding out more about it, I think, should visit the site of Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, which is known as PEAR. If you find this site, you will come to realize that a lot of research is taking place not only on so-called animate objects, but how inanimate objects also respond to consciousness. Now again, another question comes up. The question is, do our thoughts and emotions influence our physiology? I would like to explain this because we keep on thinking the whole day, and if you understand, the more we think high frequency thoughts, we feel better, and the more we align to low frequency thoughts, we also feel low. But this is not enough. I would just like you to have a look at an experiment done by Dr. Bruce Moseley in 2002. Dr. Bruce Moseley is an orthopedic surgeon, and he does operations on knees of people through two different techniques. One day, Dr. Bruce Moseley felt that he would like to gauge as to which technique he is using is more potent and more effective. So he thought of dividing two groups. First, with which he would use technique number 1, and the second where he would use technique number 2. While doing this, Bruce Moseley thought, why not even have a third group where he would just make them feel that they have been operated, but he will not actually operate them. Friends, the entire setup was laid. All these groups underwent the surgery. The first group went through the first procedure, the second through the second procedure, but the third went through a procedure, but it was just a fake procedure. They were actually operated, an incision was made, the pipe was inserted into their knees, all that they could see on a monitor. Finally, after a month, when the checkup was done, something very, very miraculous took place. We are not interested in what happened with procedure number 1 or 2, which method Bruce Moseley used was more effective. But what was more interesting, that the third group, which was operated but not operated actually, also recovered. Friends, this is very important because this gives us an insight, and this gave an insight to even researchers and scientists, that even believing that you are being operated can also heal you because your cells understand that language. They align to that frequency of yours. So actually, even medical science is presently thinking over it. Because if people are really being helped only by their minds, what is the cause of all the procedures? But the mind understands this because it feels that it has actually gone through a procedure that gives it the authenticity. That is how our psychologies influence our physiologies. Now there's one more question which needs to be answered. Now according to the law of attraction, thinking about a positive outcome create one? Because many people say that they have tried doing this, but it doesn't work. Now what is the reason it doesn't work? According to the phenomenon of the law of attraction, we tend to incite and attract circumstances, events, or whatever to the way we think and transmit our frequencies. As I have explained to you earlier, that though we look like a single operating system, we function on two layers. One is the conscious and other is the subconscious. When we watch films like The Secret or read books or literature on the law of attraction, we tend to get influenced and then start using this phenomenon. We start thinking about X, Y, and Z. We start fantasizing about what we want, but most of the time fail. Why is it so? Because if you understand, all this thinking keeps on happening at our conscious level. But suppose we have a contradicting belief about that we are thinking in our subconscious zone, then that particular belief destructively interferes with our consciously transmitted thought, nullifies the effect, so we do not materialize what we have consciously thought about. So now the question arises as to what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to delete and erase all that debris that is being lying, limiting me at my subconscious zone? Friends, there are various means to unblock the subconscious, and people are using different kind of methods to do so. But if you ask me, I have found a very effective and instant way to delete all that has been limiting us at our subconscious realm. I have found out a protocol which I think is not only very effective but very, very instant. And that protocol, my friends, is known as EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. In order to get introduced to the phenomenon of EFT, let us have a look at this video.
Pain was in every part of my body for many, many years. I stopped needing a doctor.
I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I cannot find any traces that it ever existed in my body.
I had over 80 allergies and I was allergic to the world, basically. I am not allergic to anything. I can eat anything I want to.
EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, and it's an emotional version of acupuncture, except we don't use needles. Instead, we address emotional issues. The emotional contributor to disease and ailments and physical things is far greater than the emphasis that's been given to it to date. All of us know intuitively that if we're carrying around angers and if we're carrying around anger traumas, it shows up physically. If somebody is really angry, their stomach is tight, maybe the veins down out of their neck, their blood pressure goes up, emotions cause physical things. Well, you keep that body a long period of time, now you're looking at diseases.
You know, in my own case, I got tired of giving medications which would just treat the symptoms and didn't really address what I...
T, on the other hand, zeroes right in on it, and I think that's why we get results where nothing else will.
It's possible to clear emotional issues at a deep enough level that physical healing results.
Acupuncture relies on the fact that there are subtle energies that run throughout the body called meridians. If they're not flowing well, the body's health does not. Something just very stunning. If we stimulate these meridians, tapping on them with our fingertips, it tends to balance things out, and people that would have an intense emotional issue, it would just fade. Sometimes it would happen in minutes. Once you start taking care of these emotional issues and doing it for these emotional issues and solving them, physical things start to subside as well.
Immediately, I could control my pain levels. I cannot think of one case it did not work on a migraine. My migraine was gone in 10 minutes.
I don't have diabetes anymore. I don't have to check my blood anymore. I gave my blood meter to my sister, whose cat has diabetes because she's overweight.
What we've really done is taken a very ancient, very well-established process, the ancient Chinese way of going about healing. We've dusted it off, and we've added an innovation or two. And this is the new forefront to me. We're on the ground floor of this new healing high-rise.
When I was 10 years old, I fell down a 25-foot hay chute that landed in a sitting position on a concrete landing, compressing my concrete landing. Compressed operation in 1971, the second one in 1972, a third one in 1979, a fourth one in 1984, a fifth one in 1992, and a sixth in 2002. With each surgery, the pain just got worse. I lived in pain my entire life. I lived on Tylenol with codeine 4. I took them like candy. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which was another devastating blow, and my response to that was, God, how much can I take? I was totally wheelchair-bound for 5 years. EFT brought me out of the wheelchair, put me on arm crutches, which my doctor said would never happen. Went from arm crutches to giving up Social Security disability and returning to work.
I see EFT cure things that are incurable all the time.
When it comes to the MS, I'm completely cured. It's gone. It's non-existent in my body. I'm 54 and I'm doing jumping jacks now.
I'm not saying by that we cure everything in a minute or two and in a session or two and so on, and some things take a lot longer than others, but we get astonishing results often.
So what we're going to do today is take a finger prick of blood from a few different people. We're going to take a look at it under a dark field microscope and actually look at what their live blood looks like. A person that's healthy, their live blood will look like a clean flowing river. And a sick person, clumping in just a murky swamp. Of those 6 people, 3 had blood picture that looked like there's some health issues that should be addressed. So we had those 3 people go through about 5 minutes of EFT.
This anger, all this resentment.
We drew their blood again, looked at it, and saw just total different blood pictures. No sign of clumping. I was speechless. When I could finally think again, I thought, I'm going to go home and just take my certificates, my degrees that took me years to just tear them up and just let's learn about this EFT. Normally, as a nutritionist, I would have put you on 2 or 3 months of mineral supplementation, but EFT, 5 minutes.
People on the outside, they look at some of the things we do as miracles, and I'm not really a miracle worker at all. It's just the body will tend to heal itself if energies are allowed to flow. The biggest thing that blocks that flow of energy is how emotional issues and past traumas are held in the body.
So we're getting to the core. That's why you can use it for everything.
Addiction issues.
Pain issues, vision issues,
Chronic fatigue, fear of flying,
Atrial fibrillation,
cravings,
diabetes, diverticulitis,
post-traumatic stress disorder,
abundance, it's easy to lose weight, public speaking,
insomnia,
performing in any capacity. You can go from zero desire to hot and ready.
My romantic life got better, and for the first time I can probably say I truly and genuinely like myself, love myself, have acceptance.
People ask me what kind of antidepressants I'm on, and I say EFT. You know.
I do believe anything is possible now because I've seen it. One that was really fun to do was the vision experiment I did. 75% had an improvement in their vision. I keep getting emails from people, by the way, Carol, I'm not using my glasses to look at the piano music anymore.
EFT is the best thing I found, hands down.
One of the great things about EFT is it's easy to learn by anyone.
EFT gave me the tools to cure myself.
And now I probably have seen over 2,000 clients of every walk of life on every imaginable problem with about a 98%, maybe 99% success rate. And it's not me, it's EFT. I thought, well, I don't know if I believe this, but what if I just suspended my disbelief?
Well, the manual is a free download on our website because I want the world to know how to do it. Do you want more than that?
I have found people getting unblocked and align effortlessly to their aspirations with the help of EFT. So if you want the law of attraction to work in your life, the first thing that we need to do is to unblock ourselves with all that is limiting us. And if we can do that, I'm sure we can influence the matrix of manifestation.